Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of DoubleDM podcast, where we are talking about the Geographical Almanac, Albyon Abseys, with Leigh, the head designer, lead producer, the creator of the almanac, about his process, his Kickstarter, his almanac itself, and also, well, his team and how they are creatively creating one of the most surreal, absurd almanacs of geographical locations you can find. By the way, they funded on Kickstarter on their final day with just a few hours to spare. So whenever Leigh now talks about in this episode about the Kickstarter, you know they first of all funded. And second of all, I don't know yet, but I think you can also still pledge late because the Kickstarter funded, and you can still get a piece of the action if you want this almanac in physical form, because frankly it looks amazing, so why not? Anyway, first, it is as always the time for me and Niels to discuss our weeks, what happened and what we did in ttrpgs this week. So without further ado, let me ask my co-host Niels, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, kind of. I'm a bit stressed, but overall I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, that's about it. A lot of shit to do, had a lot of shit to do, will have some shit to do today and the days to come. A lot on my plate, but overall I'm pretty good. How about you?
Well, I'm doing adequately, you could say. Could use more sleep, right? But everything is working out fine in my favor right now.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's that. I think my week's been great. My week is promising to be even greater because of the last 4 days of this week are gonna be quite cool. Today, first of all, recordings, then TTRPGs. Tomorrow, I have completely to myself and can do whatever I want. On Saturday, I'm visiting my father and playing games with him. And on Sunday, I have a jam-packed day of TTRPGs again.
Hell yeah.
Looking like a great week even.
And that work project that you were working on last week is done now, or?
No. It's still developing. It's still working, going along. We started already with the preparations for the September month, right? We're in September, obviously, but since we're doing calculations on values from September, we started already, and so far it's been looking better than last month in the testing. So just a few little minor issues that are now fixed, and so far it's looking like the process is working as intended, with only just a few minor occurrences yet. There's like 1 or 2 more things that need to be done before the beginning of October, and then we're all done with this project. And then we could also go into the optional things. Like, I'm not going to go into the details because this is business secrets, obviously. Mm-hmm. But right now we're generating a document, and it would be super cool if we don't only just send that document per email to someone, but also put it into the company Dropbox.
Perfect. Sounds good. So how was your TTRPG week so far? Anything?
My TTRPG week is already spectacular because on Tuesday, I had a session of Tyranny of Dragons. My players have finally broken the Pact of the Warlock player and are now onwards to the Metallic Dragon Council, where they have now met all 5 representatives of the Metallic Dragons to convince them that it would be in the dragons and mortals' interest to work together against the cult of the Dragon Queen Tiamat. So far, the dragons aren't that convinced, because Golden Dragon, with his idea of basically a holy war of dragons, erasing the cult from existence and raising hell wherever it needs to be done to protect everything else in this realm, is a necessary sacrifice and is okay to be done. And the other dragons are considering his idea and his proposition because, well, if we make sure that the cult is unable to resurrect Tiamat, that would solve the crisis. And if we eliminate all of those evil chromatic dragons and all of those evil mortals that are trying to ally with these chromatic dragons and raise Tiamat, that would be a good thing. The mortals obviously have a few problems with the fact that they are saying, more or less, let's burn everything to the ground that needs to be burned to the ground. That would yield unnecessary casualties, and that's what the dragons all also know, but they see the greater good. but they see the bigger picture, right? They don't care about the now. They care about the now and the next 1,000 years to come, right?
Yeah.
In this grand scheme of 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000 years, to these dragons at least, these people look like a worthy, necessary, and very small sacrifice. But obviously, they are good dragons. They are seeing reason in what the players are saying. And I'm going to say my players are doing a great job of trying to calm these dragons down with give us the chance to do it, show us how to do it, but let us try to handle this problem. We can't always rely on you dragons to do the stuff. We mortals need to be better, to show us the right way. Then again, with this argument, the dragons are going, yeah, we are showing you the right way if we are doing what we want to do. Raise hell wherever we need to erase this cult. Players made a few concessions and presents already, which is, let's be real, the dragons like it when they are promised something.
Yeah.
And my players have possibly already swayed 2 of the 5 dragons to at least vote in the mortals' favor for now.
Mm-hmm.
It could very well swing into the other direction if the players say something dumb or wrong or behave differently. That's that, basically.
All right.
So yeah, I'm very happy. It was a great session, and I can't wait for the next, where we are continuing and probably also finishing this council, because it's just a political discussion, basically. So there's no combat, there's no skill checks really involved. There's basically no abstraction of the game. It's just my players talking. It goes by quicker than some other chapters, where there's a lot more involved, I would say. But I'm hopeful that we at least have another 4 hours of this discussion, or maybe even 2 sessions. So yeah.
All right.
I have another session today on Thursday, which is gonna be basically a new chapter in our The Dark Eye campaign, which I am very much looking forward to. The chapter ending thing was basically this storm and basically phenomena of anti-elements crashing around us.
Okay.
So in this world, there are 6 elements, not 4, 6. Next to the 4 that everyone knows in fantasy and fiction, there's also basically earth. It's not, it's earth and stone are more or less separate.
Okay.
And then there is also ice. Those are the 6 elements. And basically there's elements of each type of these, right? You have ice genies, you have fire genies, you have fire elementals and stuff like that. But at the same time, demonic presences in this world are basically perversions of something. So there are also 6 anti-elements. An anti-fire element, which isn't just water, or in this world, actually the counter element to fire would be ice, but they are basically perversions of that. And we had basically elemental masters of every one of these 6 anti-elements do stuff around us, where we were trying to stop a ritual to resurrect the demon god, let's just say that.
All right, okay.
Very
Sounds
stressful and very cool. Yeah, the entire forest around us was burned down by the anti-fire elemental. There was a giant hurricane by the anti-air element, and the water around us was basically attacking us from the anti-water elemental. We weren't able to move on the ground because there were spikes everywhere from the anti-rock elemental. Actually, the anti-earth elemental tried to poison us and control trees and nature around us. It was chaos.
Perfect. Amazing.
That's a lot from me. So how about you? TTRPG wise, how was your week, or will be?
So far, nothing. That's sad. Quite looking forward to a lot of TTRPG sessions coming. One would be tomorrow, where you're playing as well, probably. Or no, next week is that. That's next week.
I was very concerned that I have a session tomorrow, because I don't have a time for a session tomorrow.
I always mix the dates up in this campaign. I don't know why, but every time I mix the fucking dates up. Anyways, then I don't have anything on Friday, but Sunday is completely packed from basically from 10 a.m. up to 6 p.m. completely filled with TTRPGs, and I can't wait. I am fucking nervous as per usual, but I am looking forward to the next session in that first campaign, especially we're playing on Sunday, because I'm interested to see what you guys will make of it and how you guys will interact with all of it. It will be a lot of fun, I hope. Maybe some emotional damage as per usual. perfect, right?
I am looking very much forward to that first session, finally being able to play again. See where our GM takes us, Niels.
Yeah, I know where I'll take you, but how you deal with this situation or location at hand, that's on you.
Let's just say you never know.
Exactly.
I mean, didn't we completely kind of destroy the last location we went to with how you expected us to do it and then how we did it?
The thing is, for the last location, I didn't expect anything. I just prepared the location, but you still managed to crash my expectations anyways.
Yeah.
Just because of the way how you did it. It was amazing. I had so much fun, but I was a bit confused at points or a bit held back because I didn't know what to do next necessarily. But I think it all worked out in the end, kind of, at least for you. But yeah, let's see where the next one is going. Hell yeah. Not nervous at all. Why would I be, right? Stage fright is a beautiful thing. Fucking hate it.
You're not on a stage, so where's the fright coming from?
I don't know, man. It's a thing. Man. It's a thing. Anyways, theoretically, I would or I could have a session on next Tuesday as well, but that might get cancelled as well.
It happens. I know what you mean.
Yeah, but anyways, let's just hope it happens or it just gets moved a bit earlier into the day. That could also be good. I just want to play, man. I just want to play. But that's about my TTRPG week that's coming. That has happened. Or not happened. But yeah, then there's a lot more stress going on tomorrow anyways, because these small little city gardens, we had one and we are now giving that up. So we have to move everything out, and basically it's a move that we have to do tomorrow. And that starts bright and early at 8 o'clock. Hell yeah. Fun. I love waking up early after working until about 11 p.m. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it will be a fun day because I then get a barbecue on my balcony.
Nice.
Barbecue grill, this small gas one, then placed on my balcony. So that's a plus.
And then the balcony is only a barbecue grill.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, sounds about right.
I think with that, we've talked about TTRPGs, we talked about our weeks, we talked about what we're doing and have done. And I think with that, it is time to meet Leigh of Albyon Abseys Geographical Almanac. Hey listener, how are you enjoying the show so far? Tell us about it in whatever way you see fit. Go to our social media pages and add us or DM us about your favorite episode of the show. We would love to hear from you on what impact our show might have had on your home games. Or you could review us on your podcast app of choice and leave us a nice message with a 5-star review. And if you want to go above and beyond, bring a friend into the fold. Tell them about our show and refer us to them so they can get a piece of the pie as well. Thank you for listening to DoubleDM and joining us on this incredible journey.
And with that, we are back with our guest now, Leigh, or also known as Albyon Abseys. But I don't want to take anything away from him, so please tell us and our listeners, who are you, how did you get into TTRPGs, all of the fun stuff.
So yes, my name is Leigh. I do kind of pull the shawl of the name Albyon Abseys over myself. So if you've ever interacted with Albyon Abseys either on Twitter or Blue Sky or Instagram or any of those other sort of online spaces, it's me that you're chatting to and that's saying hello to you. And of late, it'll be me that's constantly plugging and promoting this geographical almanac.
Nice. Okay. Niels already asked, but I want to just ask it again. The one big question that always is with the TTRPG podcast, right? How did you get into the genre, into the medium, into the games? Because obviously, for a lot of people, that's where also most of the time the content creation journey kind of starts. Because being a TTRPG enjoyer person kind of goes hand in hand with some of the things that go into being a content creator, and some of the things don't go hand in hand at all. But there's some overlap at least.
Yeah, it's a really creative creative hobby, isn't it? And I think even people that play and have never considered themselves content creators are creating content just through telling the stories that they want to tell, through sharing those stories. So yeah, I absolutely agree. It does go hand in hand. That journey for me, I would imagine, like many people, is quite a long and sort of varied path. I was very interested in storytelling and reading sort of fantastical stories as a young child. I got very interested in history quite young as well. And one of the very powerful tools of communicating history is through telling sort of amazing stories, the bizarre things that have occurred. So I was that's sort of put me on that path from a very young age, sort of expressing myself through stories and sort of finding an escape as well, a place to hide comfort and sort of explore my imaginative leanings. I did get also, as quite a young child, into choose your own adventure books, specifically from the Fighting Fantasy series. If any of your listeners have ever read those, they'll know what I'm talking about. There's two authors, Steve Jackson and Ian Livingston, that would create these fairly short sort of little books. You'd roll a couple of D6s for your very sort of basic skill stats and strength stats, I think. I might be getting that wrong. And you'd have luck points and things like that. And as you go through the book, you would, do you want to go over the bridge or do you want to go under the bridge? Do you want to draw your sword or do you want to run away? So there was that really hooked me in, that stories could be told in a slightly different way. And then I sort of fell away from fantasy and from storytelling for a little while, went through high school and things like that. And then traveled a lot as an adult, did an awful lot of things. I work in healthcare. I've worked in pediatrics for quite a lot, and then had my own family and sort of found myself coming back around to storytelling, always throughout my adult life, enjoying literature, enjoying history, and always enjoying the stories that were told by those things, but never particularly finding a drive to create along those lines myself, although I was doing lots of other creative endeavors. And then really it was through video games, actually, that I sort of was pulled back into the space. I was finding myself getting stuck on a level or wanting to be better than my friend online at that thing. So I would go onto YouTube and look things up, as many of us do, to try and understand what I was doing or get a little better or sort of find the histories of these games or, just watch other content creators, things like that, as media, as enjoyment. And I found that YouTube started to recommend me more and more stuff, as it does. And it started to recommend me other games, not just video games, board games, tabletop role-playing games. And I sort of recognized in some of those things elements from those fighting fantasy games. So I kind of tentatively, very sort of slightly suspiciously, clicked on those videos to see what they were all about and found myself obsessed really very quickly and falling in love with all of that world, and sort of feeling slightly perturbed and slightly jealous that I'd been missing out. Like all this time, I didn't even know that there were people out there partaking in this hobby, in this space. And it was just there, waiting for me to dive in. It really did feel like a cliche of, kind of a kid in a sweet shop, right? That's really how I was greedy and hungry and I couldn't get enough. Right about the same sort of time, I had a very good friend of mine sort of sorrowfully come to me saying, my partner has invited me to this thing, to this event, and I don't want to go. Will you come with me, sit next to me, and we can both just make fun of the whole thing and just kind of look down our noses at it? I inquired, what is this thing that you want me to come to? And she said, it's this game. You sit around and you roll dice. And my eyes were widening and lighting up because I could feel it. I could feel my heart going up, and I was trying to sort of hold in the enthusiasm. And I said, of course I'll come. So that was my almost exactly at the same time, that kind of almost meteor moment of something arriving in my life at a time when I had the most kind of receptiveness to it, really. So I went along with my friend, fell in love with the game. She thoroughly hated me for several weeks afterwards because I wouldn't stop talking about it. I wanted to go back. And I was supposed to be her pillar of disdain. Yeah, so that kind of got me into playing. And very quickly I realized, as someone that enjoys telling stories and enjoys creating and writing, that it was a perfect perfect outlet for me in many ways. So I very quickly wanted to run games for people. And then I very quickly, wanted to get my hands on everything that I could, all the resources, all the books I could, because again, remember, I felt like I'd been missing out. I'm looking at, say, Dungeons and Dragons, for example, and seeing 5th edition. I'm like, there's been 5 of these. So I'm kind of, where is it all? Like, I need it. I want it. I want to read it. Then you discover lore and you discover, continents. So I quickly found myself, really, really immersed in it. And the content creation side was just, like I mentioned, as players, and I think as people running the games, you start to create very quickly. You create your character. You want them to have a story. How simple or in-depth that is, it varies from person to person, table to table. But they're all stories that we want to tell and sort of express and explore. So the content creation really was about looking and finding that I couldn't locate a certain thing that I wanted. I could find subclasses, I could find magic items, I could find lots of things to put in my game or to inspire me, but I was struggling to find locations, simple, easy locations. It's all very well and good, an experienced GM saying, oh, you need a location? Here's Waterdeep. What am I supposed to do with that, right? That's like me saying, oh, you want to walk around a city? I'll drop you in the middle of London. Off you go, or Berlin or Tokyo or New York. Where do you start? So I kind of started writing small, easy locations, things that didn't require you to know all the lore. You didn't need to know hundreds of years worth of history. If your player suddenly said to you, well, what's going on over there? You didn't have to quickly panic and try and find 5 pages of content. You could just say, well, actually, I can half make it up and I can half lean on this thing that is providing me with something of a framework, but it's loose enough, it's flexible enough, it's fluid enough that if I break it or if I change it, I don't have to panic how that impacts the other 400 pages of content in this book or this work. So it was very content creating was, and I think this is the same for any artistic endeavor, any expression. It's selfish. You do it for yourself, and I think you should do it for yourself first and foremost, because then you're going to enjoy it and you're going to have a good time doing it. But then as it sort of became more fleshed out, I started to think, well, if I needed this, there might be other people that might enjoy this. So then it became about just very slowly sharing it with people, and the people that I was sharing it with were saying, hey, this is really good. Have you got any more of this? Or, are you going to do more of this? And that always feels nice, doesn't it? When you share things with people and people like what you've done and want more of it, that's a really nice feeling. So I just kind of didn't really look back from there. And every step along the journey of this Geographical Almanac has just been expanding and enhancing upon and trying to sort of fulfill the kind of needs of people that might be using the content. Yeah, it's been really fun and I've loved almost all of it.
I can imagine. I mean, it kind of sounds a bit like the journey from DoubleDM at first. This podcast developed out of Emil and myself talking at parties about our home games.
Oh.
And then we're talking about all these weird things, how we do this and how we would do that or how we could change that up and all of that stuff. Hey, if we need it, maybe somebody else needs it too.
I love that.
Let's just try putting it out there.
Yes.
And then it just develops from there.
Yeah.
It just sounds nearly exactly the same as our journey.
That's wonderful.
So I can completely understand how you feel.
I feel that there's a lot of parallels between basically all the stories that I hear from people, but they are all very nuanced in themselves, right? You just mentioned, right, how you got into those choose your own adventure books as a kid. Then life became life. You had to do homework, you had to do taxes, you had a family, right? You have a lot of other things that obviously come, and that inner child that fell in love with these fantasy choose your own adventure books obviously had to take a place back or had to get a little bit more into the background. But as soon as you realize that this is a hobby, that there are people doing this for fun every week, every 2 weeks, every month, obviously it was like, okay, that inner child came back up saying, oh, this is for me, please let us have this, right?
Yeah.
this is something that I noticed with basically everyone that we've talked to that somehow came into this space. This person had either started playing as a kid or had a very big imagination as a kid, got into choose and adventure books or just general fantasy or even sci-fi literature as a kid. And then obviously life got in the way. And the thing I've heard so many times before, and I kind of was hoping that you would say it, but didn't, because it just didn't happen. But a lot of people basically said, I got back into it in college, in university.
Right.
Obviously, when I had a little bit more time and had people that have already been playing bring this to me again, and then gave me the opportunity to do what I wasn't able to do as a kid.
Yeah.
I think it's just a beautiful thing to perceive as an outsider for a lot of people, because my story is quite different, because I got introduced very, very young and just since then never stopped.
I'm so jealous of you. I mean, I didn't know anybody as a child that played. I mean, at least I don't think I did. I think when I was, so I'm 46. I think at the time when I was of that age, I think it was probably something that people didn't talk about. I don't know. I went to an all boys school. There was a culture of kind of very, masculine kind of pursuits. People were very, I get the impression from my children that it's changed, and I'm glad that it's changed. I'm not praising my observations as being worthy. I'm glad that it's different now. I really am. But when I was at school, it was very much, if you were a certain type of person, you were locked off, and you were kind of painted with a brush, and that's what you were. And it was difficult to break out of that. So I wonder if there were people, and when I look back, I can sort of think, and again, this is me being very judgmental. I'm judging people on their appearances, which is something we all do, let's face it, whether we mean to or not, and we can try and unlearn those things. But when I look back through my childhood eyes, which I think probably were a lot more judgmental, I can sort of see through my child's mind's eye, if that makes sense. There were probably people around me that would have fit the classical, you definitely play D&D, but you just wouldn't say that you did. Thinking about it, I do remember that I created a dice roll game, but it was for American wrestling. And I remember, I remember for about, I remember one summer, probably when I was about 13, during break times, we'd been moved classrooms. Something was wrong with our classroom. We'd been moved to a different, I guess what people would call tutor groups now, or like your form room or whatever, somewhere that you go when you don't have lessons, right? And you're with the rest of your class. And I remember during break times and lunch times, other people sitting down with me and playing this. And it was I just invented this little I think it was a 2D6 system. So like all the elements were there, right? And I grew up, I lived a lot. I traveled a lot as a child. I was in foster care a lot, basically. So without kind of delving too much into that, I moved around a lot as a child. And a lot of the places that I lived in were very rural, very rich in folklore and weird superstitions. So all of that kind of fascinates me, and that's all been pulled into the almanac. All of my kind of interest in history, all of that stuff gets pulled in. So there's so many things that I can look back on, all these different disconnected interests as a child that all just fit so neatly in this hobby. Horror movies, science fiction stuff, TV shows from when I was a kid, all the classic stuff, right? Even things like, I don't know whether you're or any of your listeners are familiar with shows like Erie, Indiana, stuff like that. If you're not, I highly recommend you sort of diving in. Things like, obviously there's the classic cartoons, right? Like He-Man and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. So I think there's so much. And when I think about it, and I guess we could probably, peel back the curtain a little bit, and probably a lot of the people that were creating those things were playing RPGs. And what they were doing in their home games was informing their kind of professional creative life, which then it's that kind of drip feed, isn't it? You're sort of influenced without realizing that you're being influenced. Yeah, so there's a lot of my interests kind of just beautifully are encapsulated in the almanac, and it's such a joy to be able to kind of express all of those things, like the folk lore stuff that I'm interested in, all the odd sort of coastal seafaring superstitions that we have in the country where I live. I live right on the sea, so we have a lot of bizarre stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but the bizarre folklore stuff is just amazing inspiration, I think.
It really is.
At least
yes.
I really enjoy these sort of inspirational things for my games. You mentioned the almanac now, but please, what is the almanac? Tell us about it.
So Albyon Abseys Geographical Almanac is an A to Z of strange and fantastical locations. They are largely system agnostic. Each location covers various aspects of the location. So under each location, you'll find sights, sounds, and smells. You'll find economy and culture. You'll find hierarchy and political structure. You'll find lodgings and shelter, residents of note or NPCs, adventure hooks, trinkets and treasures and encounter roll tables, flora and fauna, lots of different unique aspects to those locations. So really it's a location resource. You can drag and drop a location into your game, your session, your campaign. And it might be that you look at the almanac and say, my players are in a forest location. So Nesteropotes, this flying log that is populated by talking squirrels, will fit perfectly there. And I want to use that to tell a certain story because one of my players is a druid, or one of my player characters is allergic to hazelnuts, or whatever, right? Whatever you want to kind of throw at your players, you can, or it might be that you just, you haven't prepared and you're in a town and you need some strange and fantastical location that isn't going to take over your campaign, but it's going to inspire strange stories. It's going to inspire your players to really kind of dive into an unusual location where there are lots and lots of things going on, but lots and lots of room for you as a GM and for your players to make the story your own. I was talking to another of the Almanac group a few days ago, and we were talking about big modules. I really struggle with running big modules, and I think a lot of people do. And I think one thing that you see that modules have in common is that, you're fighting the same bad person, or you're going to the same place as everybody else that runs through that module. And it will be different. Of course it will. People's experiences will be different. The tone of the game will be different. One person's experience might be comedy and one person's experience might be horror. But I think something like the Almanac really gives you far more freedom to add your own tone and to really weave it into the mesh of your campaign and your stories in a way that I think modules often don't allow you to. You're always sort of telling the story of the module, really. Whereas I think the Almanac allows you freedom, gives you much more space and room. At least I hope it does. That's what I hope it offers to people. We have plans for the Almanac to include 26 locations. So it's an A to Z. So every location, we have Eodriel for our A, Baron Arcadia's Circus Fortuna for our B, Cave Vayedova, which is an iceberg encased octopus, which on top of which is a trading post. That's our C through the alphabet. So we release one every month. I think we're at 21 now. We've just sent our 21st out to mailing list subscribers who enjoy a week's early access to every location, which is free. Again, all of our content is free. You don't have to pay for any of it. And we'll plan to have 26. That'll be our volume 1. And then we have volume 2, so a whole other 26 strange and fantastical locations already mapped out and planned. So in the end, there'll be 52 strange and fantastical locations, so one for every week of the year. And then beyond that, we do have plans for after that, but I'll leave those under wraps for now. We're also hoping, at the moment, we're running a Kickstarter, so we're hoping to bring the first volume into hardback book. Campaign's at about 65%, I think, at time of recording. I think we've got something like 92 backers, most of whom desperately want the book, which is amazing. I want the book as well. That would be lovely. And that's purely because I love books. I mean, I know your listeners can't see this, but if I just do that, you can sort of start to get books. And if I turn my camera that way, you can see even more books, right? Literally have thousands of books in my house. So yeah, I just really want the book. So yeah, I think that kind of gives you a window into what the Almanac is. At the moment, it's mostly written work. Mm-hmm. Each location is fairly short and brief. We're not sort of overloading you with information, I hope. So there's always a brief introduction in the manner of a bard or a scribe, something very lyrical, something that a GM can read out to the players to really give them a kind of, to steep them in the location, that sort of introduction that GMs love to do. And players love to sort of frown at and ignore. And then beyond that, then it's just sort of hopefully each section is broken down so a GM can quickly reference it. Something I struggle with books is bookmarking and underlining things and getting lost in the text. I often find that in a lot of published modules, the thing that you needed to know is 5 pages after you needed to know it. So hence why we've constructed the Almanac in a way online on the website. This is in a way that hopefully is very easy to use. Lots of drop-down menus so you can collapse menus so you're not presented with a big wall of text. You can open up boxes if you need to know, I need to reiterate the sights and the sounds and the smells of this location. I can open up that menu. I need a quick NPC, and you can collapse the ones that you're not using so they're not taking up sort of screen space and also, sort of mind space, really, right? Yeah, so hopefully they are inspiring our locations. Hopefully they're useful. That's the primary sort of functions of them, is to inspire you, to give you content that's easy to use and that is fun, really, and sometimes terrifying and sometimes bewildering and confounding, but a little something for everyone as well. I hope there are. I mentioned Nesteropotes, that flying log with talking squirrels. I think a lot of people really enjoy that location and have found a lot of fun with it, but you can bring in darker sides to it. Spoilers here for anyone that wants to play Nesteropotes, maybe plug your ears now, but Nesteropotes offers darker elements. The log, for example, one of the adventure hooks is the log is consuming the squirrels. The squirrels do not know that they are being consumed. All they know is that day by day, another of their tiny furry friends disappears, and the log is consuming them and will begin to consume the players if you stay there for too long. So there's whimsy, but there's also horror.
I feel like that speaks especially to the variety that comes with the almanac, at least for me. When I'm looking at the website, I'm currently just on one of the locations and scrolling through everything, and we have these drop-down menus that you've mentioned. Like, these drop-down menus are something that I know that's not possible in a book to have collapsible menus necessarily, but they would definitely help me as a person, because whenever, for example, I'm running currently one of those modules of D&D 5e for one of my groups, and a lot of times when my players are entering a new location in that book, I open the Faerun Wikipedia page and then have to read like 5 blocks of text. I'm really talking like pages of blocks of text. When they enter Waterdeep, like the whole article is way too long for me to keep reading. Especially because, not necessarily because I don't want to read it, but because it's not necessarily that well structured, at least for me, when I want to run a game, especially if it has to be done quickly. And this is great because I can go, okay, so my players are entering a town. What do I need? Okay, what is this location? A short, quick description. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, please tell me, but Drinstower.
Sure, if that's how you want to pronounce it, that's how it's pronounced. In your world, that is how it's pronounced. There you go. We've just made it canon.
But there's only like two to three sentences here that I would have to read to my players, or would have to maybe translate to German, but that's besides the point. But it's not much that I have to read, but it's already a lot more evocative than what I sometimes read in the normal setting books of the Forgotten Realms. And this is one of the gripes that I have. A lot of the locations feel like, this is bland fantasy made by people that have read Tolkien and have said that's the best thing fantasy can do. Now, if you agree with that stance, that's okay.
Of course.
But you can do a lot more with fantasy than just Tolkien.
Yes. I mean, I read The Hobbit as a child and enjoyed it. I've only read the first Lord of the Rings and kind of enjoyed it as well. But you're right. There's a lot more out there, I think. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with being inspired by that. If that's what excites you and that's what lights that fire for you, far be it from me to take that from you. That's wonderful. And I'm so happy for you that you have someone that inspires you and excites you. And that's nobody else's business, right? That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. But I mean, I hope, and again, as I mentioned before, it is a slightly selfish thing. I began writing the almanac for myself and trying to structure it in a way that would make it easy for me. I must give credit to Jack for the layout of the website. That's entirely his work there. And I think he did an incredible job. And I've only ever heard nothing but praise for the way that he's laid out the website and sort of made it accessible in that manner. I mean, I hope that the locations are easy for people. And we're still sort of, we take feedback. People sometimes say, hey, could you maybe think about doing that? I think Sight, Sounds and Smells was something that was added in a little bit later in the website's life, because it was like, I was actually running, I was playtesting a location and I was like, oh, that would be really useful. So, we're fully aware that it's not, we're not perfect at what we do. Feedback is important. Playtesting is great. You have to be careful with what you listen to, because not every advice is good advice. We all know that. But sort of listening to people that have played the locations. And we also always add to the location. I think that's the other thing, touching on inspiration again. Sometimes I reread the locations or I play parts of them in a game and I think, I could add that to it. Just yesterday, I was adding to Imbrustafile, which is this kind of tower, this steel shattered tower that's collapsed. I suppose sort of for shorthand, think Horizon Zero Dawn meets The Last of Us, right? A little bit like that. I thought I had an idea for a new NPC, so I went back and added it in. That's the kind of beauty of it, is I can keep adding to it and keep building it. Obviously, the book will be different. And yeah, well, you mentioned sort of hopefully in the book, we can find a way to still keep things very concise, to keep things ordered. I want to make sure that the book has a really good table of contents, a really good usable index. It's amazing the number of ttrpg books that don't have a functional index. I don't understand it. I don't think there's any excuse in this day and age. And I applaud anyone that puts a really good index. And I know if you're like an independent creator and it's just you or just you and a few friends, I know that's a lot of work. I do, but believe me, people will love you for it. Truly, and it will make your book ultimately more user-friendly. And that's what you want at the end of the day, right? If people are still using the Almanac in 20 years, I will just be so happy. Even if it's just to rip it off and make their own stuff out of it and poo all over what I've done and say it's rubbish. Hey, I'm in the conversation. That's great.
One other thing that I have to mention about the website and every location is scrolling through, right? If you scroll low enough on the website, past the top-down menus, you get a mood board, more or less, right? Images and more explanations. And holy shit, that is something that I just seriously love.
Yes.
Because when I write my locations, when I, for example, prep every single chapter of that Tyranny of Dragons game that I run, the first thing that happens is get my screen full of images that either show me characters, locations, anything. So I can think, okay, this is the scope that I want. This is the mood that I want to evoke. What am I feeling when I'm looking at this? Okay, it should be, I don't know, I remember when I was prepping the chapter where the players have to travel basically so far north that nothing can live there anymore.
Wow.
Pure ice. And I was like, okay, so I need a lot of blue and white colors, obviously, in these images. I need a white dragon in that image because it's D&D.
Yes.
I need ice caves, ice ships, and stuff like that. And when I looked at everything of that in that, most art and images of icy tundras are a little bit depressing, at least to me. And I wanted to evoke that feeling. It's empty here. Here, nothing grows here. The druid will hate it here because there is literally nothing besides ice and water anymore. And those images that you put into the Almanac website, and I can see here, those help so much on giving me just evocative feelings that I can then, even if they're not put into the text of the book, or even if they're not put in the Almanac's text, I can then say, I'm feeling this for this image. And that's what I want. Perfect.
We are visual creatures at the end of the day, aren't we? Those of us that are lucky enough to be able to see, and there are lots of people in our hobby that have those disabilities. So hopefully that's where those kind of lyrical descriptions that we provide can be really helpful. We do try to provide alt text. I think almost all of the images on the website have alt text. I will raise my hand and say I don't think we're 100% yet. Sometimes it just gets forgotten. And sometimes the website that we use has a habit of you write the alt text and then you click save and it just goes. We want to try and make sure that people can, find the Almanac accessible. And I'm the same. I do that. I go onto, various image websites and try and find, we do that for our players, don't we, in our games? Here's a picture of the monster. And that's certainly something that we want to provide in the book. If we manage to fund on the Kickstarter is hiring artists. We've got a wonderful art team. And you'll see that actually on the website. At the top menus, you'll see it says welcome, and then it says locations, and it says team. So we have quite a wonderful team of visual artists that are kind of chomping at the bit and raring to go and to create unique visuals for the Almanac. And that's wonderful for us as well, because that means that we're supporting independent artists, supporting professionals along their sort of road, really, and along their career path, and providing opportunities really for people to. Some of our artists have already done a great deal of work for some of the bigger companies. Some haven't. I think some of our writers are very new as well. So we're kind of all about kind of providing opportunities for that as well. But yeah, I agree with you. I really love those images on the NPCs. They're very I spend a lot of time finding images that I think will be appropriate and that kind of, as much as I'm a wordsmith, sometimes I can't find the words, and those pictures do a great job of sort of and music as well is another big one. We have a composer on the Almanac team that we want to, hopefully, again, funding allowing, we want to sort of create a kind of orchestral suite for the Almanac so people can have kind of, appropriately moody music to accompany, just to set the scene, to help a GM, if they're sat there prepping and they can listen to that piece of music, or just to play as an introduction to players, to give them that kind of immersive experience. I think that RPGs are so good at. I don't know any other, you can go to a concert and you can feel the kind of, the goosebumps and the hair standing on the back of your neck. You can be at certain like theatrical performances or sporting events, or be a part of a protest or a crowd or things, things happening. But there's something magical, like I truly believe that. I'm not sort of, that's not me overstating it. I truly believe there's something magical that happens with a group of people that trust each other and are sharing that journey and are sharing that story. You can go to kind of emotional places and really hilarious, fun places as well. All in the same session. And to make it as immersive as we can, we want to play that little part in helping people go to those places, because those are the games and the sessions that people remember. It's a real part of your life, and it's not just we played pretend for 3 hours. It's like I was with these other human beings and we did something really special, in a way that we can all cherish and remember and hold dear, and try to kind of share with new gamers as well, new people that come into the hobby. Hey, I've had this amazing experience, and here's all these tools that I have that I can hand to you to allow you to hopefully have those same incredible, immersive, inspirational experiences that all in all will kind of go towards hopefully making you feel, like you have a place in the world and you're a little bit happier after a session. You can go to your job or to your family the next day and be like, I feel a little bit better about myself because I just had this wonderful experience with my friends and we told a cool story. And it wasn't just like watching a TV show where the ending was so shit. And I saw it coming from a mile off. Like, there was genuine jaw-dropping moments because we created that story together and we went to those places together.
It's that participation that is so crucial to the medium. That you really working together on doing something that is truly unique to the moment that happened at the table. It's never going to happen again, that moment, because the same group of people will never get together to the same point in time where everyone had this kind of energy going. Even if their next session, right, it can also just be as great.
Absolutely.
But it's different.
Absolutely.
It's again a different thing. And it's something different because you made it that different. And it's the thing that you in that moment, at least in the best interest, wanted. Right? It's something that you in that moment needed. And a little anecdote, my first GM, who I've been now playing with for 10 years at this point, we were all invited to his birthday. And right, he is the father of one of my school friends. Like, he's not the same age as me. He's not the same generation as us. But he invited all of the group to his birthday. And when we were all there, right, his family and colleagues were there. We didn't know anybody besides his two sons and his wife. We didn't know anyone else because we are the people that he meets up on Thursday nights to play ttrpgs. We're not his work colleagues or his family. But whenever someone new came, right, he introduced everyone to each other, right? This is my family, this is my mother, this is my father, this is my brother or whatever. These are my work colleagues. And then when he got to us, he's always like, and these are the people I spend a lot of my entertainment with. And these are the people, right? This is the Dragon Rider. This is the Dwarven King. This is the Archmage of the group,
That's
right?
So cool. Imagine being someone introducing you like that. I would just...
Yes.
I'm done. That's it. I'm done. It's never going to get any better than that. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It was such a great moment, but it also showed me, right, it's not just these are the people I play games with. Somewhat transcend just that we are people playing a game. You're also your character. Your character is kind of part of you. There's this bleed of everything getting together, and that's where it's, I think, at. And it's a very big social construct to unpack, but you're more than just friends at a table. You are characters in a fantastical story, in an epic tale.
And it can connect. It can connect people that perhaps would never have connected through any other thing as well. You leave so much at the door. When I play online with a group, and we don't talk about politics. We don't talk about anything something else other than our game. And we're all like there for that and excited by it. Of course, we're all there for each other. If we, if anyone needs anything, anyone's having a bad day or a bad week, we're all there for each other. And we're all willing at the drop of a hat to embrace those outside of game aspects of life and to sort of be compassionate and loving and supportive. But yeah, it's all about those characters, and we're all so desperate to like know what's coming next. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think a big part that is often overlooked, in my opinion, is even though everyone at the table had or experienced the same thing, the experience for everyone at the table is still completely different.
Yes.
Because just the way that certain things make you feel or how you interpret different things, that everybody hears the same description from the game master, but how you imagine that or what kind of feelings this description evokes is just completely different for everyone.
Absolutely.
So everyone can have the same experience without having the same experience, if that makes any sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. I actually read an anecdote on Reddit the other day, someone talking about they were describing a fight and they were describing the place in the area, and it took about 2 hours in for the GM to realize that one of the players thought they were outside the whole time and actually they were in a building. So yes, that kind of, we go to our own places and our own minds, don't we? And find those powerful thing, the imagination. Very powerful. And
one thing that I wanted to ask about the almanac itself, or the locations rather, how do you go about creating these locations? Do you have a set work order that you about things, or is there anything that you have to have first before you can basically unlock the next thing that you want to think about? Or is there a whole work order, or do you just go off of inspiration that you get from stories that you hear, from creative dialogue that you have with your team, or anything like that?
That's a great question. So usually for me, it's to use your wonderful word unlock, because that's, I think, really, pardon the pun, key here. I think that unlocking the locations for me is two things. It's the name and it's the general theme about the most recent location that was put on the website, which was Xylomastria, which is an arcane terrarium in the study of an endlessly slumbering mage. So for me, the name just evoked something, which is unlikely to evoke the same thing in anybody else, right? Whatever it means to me, who knows? So finding the name and then finding, well, what is it? Okay, well, I want a forest, I want a jungle, but I don't just want a jungle. Like that's, everyone's done that. There's nothing strange and fantastical about that. That's always the brief. Is it strange? Is it fantastical? So then how do I take a kind of jungle or a forest? How do I make it strange and fantastical? Okay, well, I'll shrink it down and I'll put it in a little glass pot. Okay, that's strange and fantastical, but how do I make it even more strange and fantastical and fit it into the kind of, nestle it into the bosom of fantasy? Okay, well, I'll put it on the windowsill in a mage's study. Okay, well, I need to push it even further. Okay, well, let's make the mage, he's slumbering. Well, why is he slumbering? He's not just having a nap. He's trapped in some kind of arcane sleep. Okay, well, where do I go with that? Okay, well, maybe the soul of the mage is trapped inside that terrarium, and the adventurers need to go in to free the mage. Why do they need to free the mage? Well, we can unlock that in the multiple adventure hooks. We can discuss that and inspire the GM. And amongst the GM sort of adventure hooks, there'll be things like, that mage is needed for a reason. It's up to you to find that reason. Is it someone that means something to the party? Is it a relative? Do they need a spell to save someone? And only that mage is capable of transcribing that spell. Has the king or queen come to the party and said, "Where is my mage? I haven't seen them. What's going on?" And that's where you find them. So it's kind of building layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And then really once I have the general theme and the name and a rough idea of what it is, it sort of writes itself, to be honest. And I kind of unspool from there. I generally tend to write 2 or 3 locations at the same time. I like to spin a lot of plates. I'm always 2 or 3 locations ahead, but that's just because I'm very busy. Work full time, I have a family. I've kind of generally got a lot going on anyway. So I like to not be in a panic. That means that locations are allowed to stew as well. I can return to them and go, you know what, that's not quite right. That needs adjusting. And I can go to the other writers and say, what do you think about this? And then we talk about it and discuss it. And like most ideas, when you present it to a group of people that you trust and whose ideas you admire and respect, the idea will get better. And then I'll go back in and rewrite stuff, edit things. And then we sort of throw out, once they're maybe 90% finished, then the kind of carpet is rolled out to the rest of the writers to, hey, now let's write the roll tables. What ideas have we got? Because then it's just loads of fun. It's just everyone throwing in and it almost feels like we're all trying to outdo each other together with, more strange and fantastical ideas. Oh, you wrote that? Well, I'm going to make this. Wow, you really went over the ball with that one. And so my idea now is going to be even crazier than yours. So, and then that's the fun part, right? But I will not lie to your listeners. Writing it's hard work. You have to be persistent. You have to be honest with yourself that what you're writing is good. And you have to kind of trust yourself because everyone will have an opinion. I mean, talked about Tolkien. There are people who will be like, oh, he's such a terrible writer. And there are other people who say he's the best writer ever. So in those two subjective opinions, apply that to your own creations. People will have good and bad opinions about what you do. So you kind of need to work through that yourself and trust what you're doing, trust what you're creating, and be honest with yourself. And if you're happy with it, like I feel like a child when I'm writing my locations. I get very excited. I was up until 3:00 this morning writing a location for the letter G because I was just so excited and so desperate to get it all down. Those ideas were just flowing. So I think if you're creating and you feel that excitement and you feel passionate about what you're doing, I think you're probably onto a good thing. So that's the kind of general process. It is a lot of work. I do take my time with it. I'm very fortunate that locations have a framework, so that helps with the creativity. So if you're creating something, you do have a framework. You can work in that, and it does help. Does make it easier. And then just like make it fun for yourself. Like really, at the end of a location, when I'm about to hit publish on the website, if I'm thinking I can't wait to go there, then I know I've done a good job, right?
And regarding the timeline of the creation of each location, is there a one thing that takes the most time for each location, or is it different for every other location?
I think I'd say the thing that takes the most time is the editing, is going back into the writing and chopping it down, getting rid of the loose words. And you'll see, anyone that's reading through the locations will look at some of them and think that could do with a little bit more editing, Leigh, if you don't mind. But that's subjective. So the editing takes the most time because you can write stuff and you get better at that. You get better at your first pass being closer to your final edit. But anyone that says they don't edit their writing is either a really bad writer or is lying, because you do need to edit your work, or someone needs to edit your work. So the editing takes the most time. I think the second thing that takes the most time depends on the location. Sometimes it's the NPCs can be tough because you're like, okay, well, we've kind of done that in another location. That happens, right? The more locations we have, the more we run the risk of repeating ourselves. There's also only so many themes that you can cover. There's only so many ideas. Anyone that's done storytelling classes at college or school, university, or online or whatever, will be familiar with the idea that there's only so many stories that we can tell. Is it 7 or 5? Something like that, right? So that gets harder the more locations there are. Some locations it is, I think one location was particularly tricky with trinkets because we had to be very sort of wary of not overstepping and not pushing things too far. Like our content, I'd say it does lean towards adult themes, but it is not, we avoid themes that push things too far. I don't see any need for sexual violence, for example, in RP. I just don't. If you want to do that at your table, fine. We don't need to have a discussion about it or an argument about it. You do you, I'll do me. Fine. I don't want to play at your table. That's all there is to it. Yeah. So we don't introduce things like that into the almanac, but I think they do lean slightly towards the darker side sometimes. But again, that comes back to my interests of folk lore, folk horror, darker superstitions, stranger elements. I just find that interesting. And there was one location where we kind of had to be a bit careful. We kind of had to balance things and not go too far. Some of the subclasses that we're writing now for the Kickstarter as well, if it funds, we want to have 26 subclasses for people to play. And one of those, we've been having a pretty in-depth conversation over the last week of not pushing it too far. So sometimes things like that, it takes time because either it's difficult creatively or because you're trying to handle things responsibly and not let people down, and not just hand over a sloppy product where someone goes, you clearly didn't think about this and you've just used these real offensive, tired tropes that by now, in this day and age, you should have known to do better. And that's not to say that we're perfect. We clearly are not. There will be things in our work that people will say, hey, probably could have done that better. And I'm more than happy to, take that on the chin. So yeah, every location's different, just like every real location, right? You're going to have a different experience in one town to the next, and find things that are difficult.
For sure. One thing that I want to ask that might be a little bit hard for you to answer, and I totally understand when this isn't really something that you can answer, but gonna be very, very, very mean to you. What is your favorite of your locations?
Oh no! How could you? So there's the kind of tired cliche of like, they're all my children and I love them all equally. I don't. Some of them are horrible little bastards that caused me pain and fury. I think honestly, it's always going to be the one I'm either working on right now or the one I've just released. But there are elements in every place that hold things I am passionate about, or things that make me excited for different reasons, and hold kernels of me, I suppose, or aspects of the other writers that have contributed to them. So I can and I think that comes back to that, what I said right at the top of the show about feeling like a child in a sweet shop. I'm just recreating the sweet shop. Let's face it. That's what I'm doing. So, and I'm greedy and hungry, and I have a bottomless appetite for this stuff. So at the moment, I'm going to say Xylomastria is my favorite because it was the most recent added. One of the NPCs in there reminds me very much of my children. It'd be fairly obvious which one. I think it's tomorrow I'll be adding the latest one so that'll become my favorite. Which is
that's totally fine.
Yeah, which is, so the newest one's going to be Paeolian Souls, and that's basically I don't say it at all. You won't see this word anywhere in the location, but it's vampires, basically. Yeah. So I've been on a big vampire kick recently. Again, another great love of mine from childhood. So yeah, it's all swings and roundabouts. Everything. Time is a flat circle, right? Yeah.
No, but it's really important, I feel, to, when you're creating something, obviously be excited about it.
Yes.
Really enjoy, first of all, the creation of it. I think one person that I really look up to is Kaya, also known as Mirrorlock on social media.
Right.
And what Kaya once said on another interview show was, do you enjoy the creation of it, or do you enjoy that it has been created when you're looking at a project, right? Because if you're only wanting the project to be created and existing, you need to have the creation process be fun and exciting,
absolutely,
and passionate for you. So you're actually creating something that at the end you would probably also enjoy way more, because that passion, something that I've noticed with every medium, podcast, streams, YouTube discussions, ttrpg books, anything, is you can separate those where there is clear passion from the creators showing, and those where it was created for capitalist monetary reasons of, let's push out another D&D book, let's go, we need money.
Absolutely.
And then you have these passion projects where you just know these people put so much time, effort, blood, sweat, tears into this project. And yes, you can feel that as a person when you're reading it. Something that, when looking at the Albyon website, is that passion does shine through. I can tell you that. I can reassure you on that. It shines through. The evocative descriptions, the images, everything on this page shows me that people care about this work.
That's very kind of you to say. That means so much. Thank you so much, and that's genuinely is lovely to hear. And of course, if it's useful and if it inspires you, you don't even have to use a location. If you just look at it and go, oh my goodness, I have a great idea for how I can make that completely different. That's fantastic. Essentially, we're just passing inspiration around, aren't we? Really, and we do that as players and as game masters. We're inspiring each other. The person next to you who describes that spell, you're inspired and you're like, oh my goodness, that was so cool. And now I'm going to describe my sword attack in such a cool way because you've inspired me to do that. Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that the love comes through on the Almanac, because it is, we do love it a great deal and we're really proud of it. We don't have any, I'll be perfectly honest. If someone came to me tomorrow and said, hey Leigh, do you want to do this full time and we'll pay you a massive full time, I would bite their hand off. Of course I would. Yeah. Of course I would. But at the same time, if that never happens, I don't mind. I really don't mind. I just want to create strange and fantastical locations for people to enjoy and for them to be inspired by. This can be a really expensive hobby. We all know that. The weight and tug upon the wallet is real. And sometimes, especially in this day and age, you know, people are struggling financially, and it can be really difficult when you see, you know, people on YouTube or whatever with shelves full of D&D books, and you don't have those things, and you're never going to have those things. And that can be really like, does that mean that you shouldn't enjoy the hobby as much and you shouldn't have access to that stuff? Now, we all know that there is a flag flying somewhere in a lot of people's heads with a skull and crossbones on it. Yeah, you're there, you're real, we recognize you. That exists, that's a thing, that's okay. But, you know, there should be other ways into this hobby for people. That doesn't mean that you have to, and these books are expensive. They're not cheap books, and you can't get them from your local library, and it's difficult. So if we can help people into the hobby and we can give them tools, and yes, of course, with our Kickstarter, we're saying, hey, please buy our book. Of course we are. Like, that goes without saying. Books cost money. But if the book funds, the website's not going anywhere. You can still use our locations for free. You can still access our content. We do have a Patreon. Yep. I don't really push it very often. And the Patreon is like a little money box. It's like a little piggy bank. And it just goes back to the website. No one, you know, it doesn't go in any of our pockets. It just goes straight back to the website, because websites cost money as well. You know, there's a yearly fee for stuff, right? It's just the world we live in. So yeah, hopefully it's just always, I mean, I say always, what does that even mean nowadays? I hope for a long time that it's there. And if people want to scan it and screenshot it and print it off, please do. That's great. If people want to turn it into a PDF at home, you can do that. We don't mind. We love you for it. If it's inspiring you and you feel the love that we've put into it, and it makes you pass that love onto your players and onto your games, onto your sessions, your players are going to just be enriched, and so are you. And that's really all it's about, right? It's giving people tools to have a great time and be enriched by the stories that they're going to tell. And hopefully our stories show that we respect that time. You know, our locations show that we respect the efforts that you put into your game, and that we want to give you really, really good content.
Yeah, I think when content creators go about their creation process in a similar way, or just having a passion for their own product and their creation phase, it kind of not only creates the product itself, but it creates a spark. It might take hold on some bonfire starter, or it doesn't.
Yeah.
But some spark will take hold and then create this whole nurturing and warm feeling of just having done something.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
This is often overlooked when talking about content creation, especially in our modern capitalist world where, we all need money. But the thing that is really important is just creating passion or using passion to create passion, and therefore just enriching the whole medium itself or all other media.
Yes.
And then bleeding into each other and creating even more and just having a good time. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, I've always wanted, I didn't really know what it was. I just sort of had this idea that it was maybe a person. But as time has gone on, to me, it's become a village. When people discover the Almanac on social media sites, I very often find myself saying, welcome to the village. Because I feel like now that there's this team here, I think that's my sort of ultimate goal, is if we manage to make books. Even if this Kickstarter doesn't successfully fund, we'll be back. We'll try again, you know, but we'll just try it and try and be better and just try different sort of things. And because ultimately what I would like to do is to hold the door open for other people, encourage people, for map makers and writers and artists, to give them a sort of space that they can use our content to be inspired by. Some of the artists, if you've looked on the Kickstarter, you'll see some of the, there's some incredible artwork that a couple of the artists have already started to create for the Almanac. They've always said to me, do you have any notes? Is there anything you want me to change? And I'm always like, no, you were inspired. You went to that location, you visited it, you explored it, you were inspired to create the thing that you created. And that's amazing. I don't need to give you any notes. So yeah, if in the future we could have, a printing press, in the old timey sense of the word, would be amazing. I would love that, and to support, people coming into, and that's not to say that I'm not any kind of anything in this space. I don't understand how it works, understand Kickstarter particularly very well. I don't get the kind of economics of it all particularly. particularly, but I'm willing to try, and I'm willing to admit to my mistakes and the things that I don't understand and be open and honest about that, and hopefully, inspire other people to just start. Because I find a lot of it is quite gated. There's a lot of like secret information that nobody wants you to know, and it's sort of like hidden behind things and places and brands and stuff like that, right? So it can be quite scary and intimidating. So if there's any of your listeners out there that need any advice or want some help or a bit of encouragement, or they want to get involved, or they want some pointers, I'm more than happy to do that. My advice might not be the best, but if anyone out there wants to approach the Almanac, we're totally open for that. We're always happy to kind of welcome people into the village. Always.
Awesome. And then just one quick question before we can wrap up today's episode. What would be your most unconventional or weird GM advice for our listeners?
Unconventional, I think, try a session where you have nothing prepped, like nothing.
Okay.
Don't even read your notes. Don't look at anything that you've done in the previous session. Ask your players to recap or get them to roll a dice. Lowest on the D20 recaps. And then take one thing from each of your players, one item that they have in their inventory that they've just been sitting on, and that's the only thing that you have for that session. And just try and improvise your way through that session and pull one thing from each of your players. It could be a spell. It could be an ability or feat. It could be, some trinket that you gave them 10 sessions back that they've never done anything with, because let's face it, that happens in every group. But beyond that, do nothing but listen to your players and follow them. And that can be a little bit unsettling. Sometimes players can be a bit unsettled by that because they might be thinking, what's going on here? Where's the content? But try it. See what happens. It might be the worst session you've ever run. It might lead to the best session you've ever run. But you'll learn some stuff, and you'll have listened to your players in a way that you might not have done for a little while, maybe for a few sessions, because you were so baked into your prep, so baked into your notes, so baked into the things that you had planned. So just try and kind of free fall for a little bit. See how it feels. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But you might find new things, new techniques, and just learn some stuff that will just give you a different perspective. Yeah, try that and let me know how you get on. That would be great.
I'll have to try that myself.
And in a pinch, if halfway through the session it's all going to shit, just grab one of our strange and fantastical locations and you'll be fine. You'll be all good.
Perfect. Okay, and then we are at the end of our episode. So now if you have anything to shout out, if you want to shout out anyone, anything, now's the time to do so.
I would love to just say a big thank you to everyone that has read or used the Almanac, readers new and old. All of your feedback, all of your shares, your likes, your love, your comments. It's all amazing, truly. And we read everything. We see every one of you. Thank you to all the Almanac team as well. You're all incredible. I mean, you know that already. You don't need me to say that, but thank you. Amazing. Keep on doing what you're doing. Let's go. Only 52 locations in total to do. And to you guys for having me on the show, and to listeners, thank you for listening. And also to Pip, Ella, and Nina. I love you guys. Come and see us at www.albionabseys.com. Was there too many W's there or too few? I never know. I get lost in the W's. And you can find us basically if you type Albyon Abseys, so that's ALBYON for Albion, and Absey ABSEY. You'll find us pretty much anywhere. You'll find us on Spotify, on Instagram, blah, 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 all the rest, right? We're on Kickstarter. I mentioned we're on Patreon. We're all over the place, really. We're slowly reaching our tendrils out. At the time of recording on this Sunday coming, we've got a little thing going on YouTube, which should be really fun. It's our first kind of venture onto YouTube. Our wonderful Almanac scribe, Erica, is going to be leading a sort of band of actual play adventurers to Imbrustafal, the tower of sort of mayhem and monsters that I mentioned briefly earlier on. So that should be fun. And hopefully we'll be doing a lot more of those. It's always kind of been something that we planned, but life is life. Things, happen when they happen, right? Keep an eye out for us on YouTube. And yeah, like I said, if you can always email us, you can talk to us. We're on social media. We're always happy to chat with people and just, kind of be around, really. Stop by the village anytime. The water is fine.
All right. And then with that, thank you all for listening. And thank you, Leigh, for being here and doing this episode with us.
Thank you.
It was amazing.
Thank you so much, guys.
And hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of DoubleDM. It appears you liked this one. What we had to say and our advice helped you. Why not show us how we helped you in a rating? Or even write a review detailing us how we helped. You can do this on the platform that you are listening on right now. It's just a few clicks, doesn't take long, and helps us out. It gets us out there and our advice into more ears of more people. Thanks again for listening and joining us on this amazing journey. Have a great day and hear you on the next one. Bye bye.